Hello everybody, today is the day. The cat's out of the bag now. Trump's case has been delayed till after November 5th election, but what's not is that Biden's ties to his son Hunter Biden have now been revealed. And now Trump is saying that he is going to have massive reform if he wins presidency to go after everyone that specifically used lawfare to attack political opponents. This is big. Do you support him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because we have now the details of what they're going to do to go after Joe Biden. Not only is the DOJ bringing up Russia again, it's a reminder of the old saying, fool me once, remember 2016 Trump-Russia collusion? Shame on you. Fool me twice, 2020 Hunter Biden laptop, Russia disinformation, shame on me. And now a third time. And how is it that only this happens during the big election years? We have all the details for you right here. I just want to say thank you for watching. If you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button so we can serve you every day with the top news. And also, if you don't mind, click the thumbs up like button. Just want to say thank you to everybody that supports us. And thank you to everybody that is a new member of the True Life News community. And thank you to everybody that gives a super chat donation. Remember, the links are in the description for you to join. It is only 99 cents. What we want to do is bring true life, positive change to this crazy world through this channel. We want to record it. We want you to be a part of it. And it's our way of giving back, joining together, because there's too much craziness and we need to have some positive change. So please join us. It's only 99 cents per month. The links are in the description. Love y'all so much for supporting us and my family through this all. Let's get right into this news because it is crazy. Check it out.
We mentioned at the top of the show tonight, we have major breaking news out of New York City where, well, very abusively biased Judge Juan Merchan announced the sentencing of former President Donald J. Trump has been postponed until after the election in November. Now, Trump has been awaiting sentencing for months after getting convicted on these 34 counts of falsifying business records in what was one of the most clear, obvious witch hunts of all times, and featuring a conflicted judge, a jury pool drawn from one of the most liberal parts of the country, and of course, a completely made-up crime using a novel legal theory specifically designed just to get Trump convicted. Anyway, here with more is Trump campaign senior legal advisor and spokesperson Alina Habba is with us. Alina, this case is probably the most egregious. In New York, this would be a misdemeanor case. The statute of limitations had run out.
Right here.
So they come up with this creative, novel idea that this very abusively biased judge goes along with, that somehow turns it into multiple felonies. They pack felony upon felony, and they bring this case to court under a theory that had never been used before. And here we are. And then we have a Supreme Court decision on immunity, which would mandate this judge vacate that verdict, considering evidence presented to that jury was from the time when Donald Trump was doing his official duties as president.
100%.
But yet the judge is not going to consider that, or is he really considering it, but doesn't want to tell us till after the election?
Your guess is as good as mine is, Sean. The reality of the situation is this case never should have been brought. Cy Vance passed on it. So did Alvin Bragg. But then the president decided to run for office. So that's why we are here. Judge Merchan.
So if you didn't know that, 2 district attorneys passed on it. They weren't going to charge Trump. But then Trump decides to run for president again. Biden works with Merrick Garland, who's the head of the DOJ, sends the 3rd highest ranking official at the Department of Justice. They leave the Department of Justice, go to be an assistant DA in New York to then file the charges against Trump. It was 100% targeted.
Decision today, while it does show some deference, is still flawed, in my opinion, because of one thing. Like you said, the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in this country, a country based on the Constitution, separation of powers, we have that in place for a reason. They said that a president is immune, and that's all presidents, not just President Trump, from these types of political or any, frankly, prosecution, persecution, civilly or criminally. And the fact that he is kicking the can down the road, while it's appreciated because he doesn't want to appear to be doing what I and you have called election interference, which is what it is great. However, this case should be, frankly, dismissed. There was testimony on this case at the time of trial from people that were sitting in the Oval, from the president's team, evidence that should never have been brought in under this Supreme Court decision. So hitting the can down the road, I appreciate, but quite honestly, Sean, this should be vacated in its entirety.
It should be. I mean, was there not evidence presented? For example, Hope Hicks' testimony would be one example, but weren't there multiple examples of evidence presented to the jury that would fall under the Supreme Court decision on immunity that should not have been allowed into evidence, which would cause Mershon to vacate that verdict, wouldn't it?
100%. So right there, what he just said, there's been all the things that were used whenever Trump was president officially. So there's errors in the evidence. That's why they're saying that this is going to be called a mistrial.
Absolutely. And not only were there multiple witnesses brought from the administration while he was in the office, but President Trump himself was sitting at the Oval in the Resolute desk while this was happening. The acts they claim, the payback by an attorney for an NDA, was during the time that President Trump was in the Oval. The entire case is flawed. It is past the statute of limitations. It was purely brought for political reasons. We know this. And when you bring DOJ officials onto the DA's office in a state court for felonies, it's a joke. There's so much wrong with this case. It should be completely admonished. The judge should be admonished, in my opinion, for not recusing, number one, for not dismissing, and for continuing to waste taxpayer dollars. This is a joke and an atrocity that the American people and the city of New York is seeing it. That's why they've got crime, and that's why people are fleeing.
No, I totally agree. All right, we had another court case this week, and I want to get into that. And this had to do with the D.C. case, and the special prosecutor in this case, who, by the way, the legitimacy of the appointment of this prosecutor is in question, as we saw down in Florida. The entire case was thrown out because by Judge Eileen Cannon. I think that would be applicable here. But the prosecutor refiles the case, and the judge this week then goes on to say, okay, well, we're not going to try the case before the election because they don't have time with all the motions that'll be going forward, but they're going to allow this weaponized DOJ to put out prejudicial information against Donald Trump that will not be refuted. It will not be sworn testimony as a means, again, of impacting an election while the vote is going on. What happened to the 60, 90-day rule or practice of 100%. The DOJ in the past? Is that dead, gone, and buried?
It's unbelievable. And you're right, Jack Smith has been ridiculed and completely taken back from having any authority, as we know. Now, they've appealed that, but there's no decision on that. And as you said, this is the issue, Sean. We can say that trials will get kicked back, decisions on sentencing will get kicked back, but we have to hold accountable the people here that are influencing an election, because that is what this is. They want to bring up appeals, rehash old news that is frankly fake news. And we have to, as the American people, try and sift through that. That is election interference at its finest. It's improper, and we don't get a chance to go to trial and rebut it and show the American people what a joke this is. But it will come to November 5th. I think the American people are frankly getting it. They're sick of it, and they want to hear about policy. They don't want lawfare anymore. I truly believe that.
And I'll tell you this, like, the worst part about this is, even if after this election, because to me this is all election interference. Like, when you're in an election year and the votes are trying to be swayed towards one party, and they're trying to throw all these accusations, all these allegedly things happening. But what's so bad is that what you're about to see next, because with Hunter Biden now has the 9 counts against him, they have an attorney now who says, look, we've linked Joe Biden to Hunter Biden, and we're going to go after Joe Biden. This is why I think maybe was a big reason that they switched out Joe Biden with Kamala Harris. Let me know your thoughts, but check this out.
Your son Hunter is on trial, and I know that you cannot speak about an ongoing federal prosecution. But let me ask you, will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes.
There's Joe Biden claiming he won't pardon his son. Did anybody really believe him that day? Hunter's last-minute guilty plea should not have come as much of a surprise. A jury trial in this case for Hunter and the tax fraud would have, again, exposed the vast and treasonous Biden influence peddling business, which has netted tens of millions of dollars for the Biden family, directly selling access to Joe Biden to China, Russia, adversarial countries, and also other shady businesses and people all around the world. It's as simple as that. Of course they can't go to trial and let that leak out for weeks right before the election. Congressman James Comer is the chair of the House Oversight Committee. His committee's impeachment inquiry uncovered mountains of evidence against the Bidens, and he joins us now. Congressman, your take on Hunter's...
If you didn't hear that, he's over the House Oversight Committee in Congress. This is the guy with some pull, and just like what you see at the bottom, the Bidens will be held accountable. They're going to go after Joe Biden.
Last-minute guilty plea.
Well, he had to plead guilty. I mean, the evidence is there. It's in plain sight. We've been accumulating the evidence for months and months. We have been very transparent with the American people. He took in millions and millions of dollars and failed to pay taxes on it. Look, a lot of what is in California is based on the fact that he received the money from Burisma and never paid taxes on that. But what wasn't in California, according to the IRS whistleblowers, is the fact that the $27 million that we proved the family took in, the IRS never prosecuted them on that. That's what Shapley and Ziegler were wanting to prosecute Hunter Biden on, but they were told to stand down by the Department of Justice. So the majority of what Hunter Biden didn't pay taxes on, the government never prosecuted him. So this was a pretty good deal for Hunter Biden to plead guilty for the obvious, the income that he got an actual W-2 on. But the vast majority of the money that we proved the Bidens took in, they never paid a penny of taxes on it. So this isn't going to be over if I have anything to do with it. But at the end of the day, it proves that the Bidens are crooks. And that Joe Biden has lied about his family's crimes and his involvement in them.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember in 2016, Trump let Hillary off the hook. I mean, he didn't push his DOJ. Everybody just kind of looked the other way. That we knew that Hillary Clinton had destroyed, federally subpoenaed evidence. It was very obvious that it happened. That's a pretty serious crime. Most people go to jail for that. When Trump got out, obviously they took everything they could. And are throwing everything but the kitchen sink at him to try and put him in prison for nothing. So my question is, what happens this time? This is like, now we're going to go back. There's a fairly decent chance Trump wins this election, and you're going to have Joe Biden now leaving. After a very obvious scheme to make millions and millions of dollars selling access to his power. Do we let another elite just kind of get away with it, or do we actually actually do something about it?
We better do something about it. We better treat everyone equally under the law, and the law has clearly been broken by the Biden family. Not just the Biden family, but the deep state bureaucrats that tried to cover up the Biden crimes. You have the Securities and Exchange Commission, the FBI, the DOJ, the IRS. There are specific employees, career bureaucrats, that need to be held accountable for the cover-up. And this time, when Donald Trump's president, and hopefully he has an attorney general that's aggressive in pursuit of justice, they go after the Biden family as well as the deep state actors who were involved in the cover-up. We've already done the investigation. The investigation's there. Now we need accountability, and unfortunately, accountability appears will only come in a new administration. And at the end of the day, you look at all the crimes they've committed. Any other person that committed a fraction of these crimes would already be in prison.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, these are big things. And real quick, your prediction, November 6th, does Biden just pardon his son, make this all go away the day after the election?
I think that Joe Biden will pardon his son before he leaves office. I've said that for over a year.
Remember, before he said he wasn't going to pardon his son. Why? He was still running for president. Now that they done kicked his butt out, I can promise you this. He's going to pardon his son, because Joe Biden did not want to leave office. He did not want to not run for the 2024 president. They 100% came after him. Remember, he said, it's going to take God Almighty to take me out of this race. And then Nancy Pelosi, Obama, Chuck Schumer, Kamala Harris, no, he's going to pardon his son.
But remember, what we in the committee voted, and we held him in contempt. We also charged them with lying to Congress. So Hunter Biden committed perjury. Jim Biden committed perjury. What this plea deal in California has nothing to do with that. So a new Department of Justice in a Trump administration can charge the Bidens for perjuring themselves under oath in front of Congress.
I'm telling you this, the biggest thing that we're going to see coming, I feel like coming out of if Trump wins, out of his administration, is that there's just like whenever Elon Musk bought Twitter, what did he do? He released the Twitter files, and it explicitly showed that the Biden administration, the FBI, all them pressured to take down certain people, to shadow ban certain people, and to remove and to pressure people to be, and essentially their list, all their posts to be like taken down and whatnot. If Trump wins presidency, he's going to do the same thing, I think, with the entire federal government this time. For the first time, he was new, didn't have anybody. Now he has the dream team, and you're about to see one of the guys, the dream team, who I could see this guy being the attorney general and going after all of them. Check it out.
The Department of Justice, so-called, which is a grotesque, really, parody of a Department of Justice, indicted 2 foreigners and named in the indictment 3 conservative podcasters, internet figures, all Trump supporters, as somehow connected to a foreign country. And immediately their content started disappearing from, say, YouTube. They pulled a big documentary off YouTube this morning because the Biden administration said that, yeah, it's beyond belief. So basically you have the Biden administration's Department of Justice shutting down criticism of the Biden administration. And I don't know if I'm going insane or I'm missing something. Is anyone noticing this? How is this allowed?
So I'm glad you brought this up. There's definitely something really weird going on here. So I don't have any facts any different than what other people have read about this in the last 24 hours, but I do have a gut instinct about it that's pretty strong. And it comes from just basic pattern recognition of the last 2 election cycles. Okay?
Exactly.
But my background as an entrepreneur, I have not been paying super close attention to American politics till about 2016.
Hey, Jackie, carry on. Thank you so much for supporting us and joining the True Life News community.
And then much more in 20.
Everybody show Jack some love in the chat.
And then, of course, I'm in the thick of it now. But let me take those last 2 presidential elections. So this myth of, does it exist, some sort of foreign election attempts at interference? Of course it does. It happens worldwide. It happens here in the United States. But this idea of Russian election interference in particular, let's trace the history of that in each of the last 2 elections. Let's go to 2016. The allegation of Russian election interference to support Donald Trump, when you double click on that and look at what was the actual foreign election interference there, it was actually U.S. election interference in the U.S. election through the Steele dossier, but laundered through the narrative of actual Russian interference. And actually there was a Russian intermediary to perpetuate that attempt at election interference about Trump's Russia collusion hoax. That's in 2016. Now we get to 2020. Again, domestic election interference is the systematic suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story. That didn't happen by Russian companies, it didn't happen by the Russian government. It happened by U.S. social media companies acting at the direction of deep state actors in the U.S. government that suppressed probably a story whose suppression changed the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. But again, what did they say? They said, no, this was Russian disinformation. So now you're seeing a pattern. In 2016, there's domestic attempts at election interference, but they run it through a Russian smokescreen. In 2020, there's domestic election interference, but they run it through a Russian smokescreen. So this time around, when I see Merrick Garland in the Department of Justice sitting under the Biden administration, suddenly alleging election interference by the Russians, I don't have any facts other than to say my radar goes off and says, I want to know where that election interference is actually beginning. a lot of those allegations that they were somehow helping Trump, I actually got curious. Actually, you could make strong arguments that a lot of these posts or whatever actually weren't helping Trump at all. But the fact that they called that Russian election interference again just suggests to me that this may be part of a pattern of what we saw in 2016 and 2020.
Well, you think?
So I don't really buy what they're selling on this.
Let me tell you this. I don't know if they just think that Americans are this stupid to think that in 2016 it was Russia collusion, which was fake. In 2020, Russian disinformation, and it was fake. And now again in 2024, like, come on. Like, literally, it's the same story. It's literally, there's nothing different, but yet they want us to just trust them without a shadow of a doubt that they are telling the truth and all this. I don't believe it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But to me, when all the other stuff that you said was true and the 51 FBI agents that signed the paper saying the Hunter Biden laptop was fake, but it was all a lie, yeah, you've lost me. You have to really prove now that what you're doing is truthful for me to actually believe what the next thing that you say is the truth. Because I'm telling you this, there's only one thing that they want to do. They want to put Trump in jail. Check this out.
The 5 co-host, Judge Jeanine Pirro, a former New York State judge and district attorney, a ton of experience with all of this. There's a lovely picture of it. I love when we show that picture.
Hey, Albert Merano. Hopefully I said that right. Thank you so much for supporting the truth and joining the True Life News community. We're going to make positive change through this channel. Show some love to Albert in the chat, everybody.
It's another life.
How are you? Good to have you here today. So what's your reaction to Judge Merchan moving it? You are?
I am stunned. Look, this is a judge who at every turn ruled against Donald Trump. Yeah. This is a judge who allowed prejudicial evidence to come in, evidence that had nothing to do with the underlying charge.
Jackie, thank you so much for the super chat. She said, Biden will pardon his entire family and himself. I believe it. Show some love to Jackie in the chat, everybody.
Speaking of the underlying charge, most of it is expired pursuant to the statute of limitations, bootstrapped and resurrected by another crime that the jury didn't have to really identify. And there's a lot of hearsay and there's some privileged information. Then in the interim is a Supreme Court decision that came out in July that said, hey, you know, you have to separate immunity or immunize and privilege testimony from the underlying essence of the crimes in this case. And now all of a sudden, Judge Merchan is saying, well, I don't want to be political here. I think it's time that we took note of the fact that we're in a presidential election season. Are you kidding me?
Man.
This is a political decision made by a judge who said, you know what? This is a close election. I'm not going to give Donald Trump any kind of advantage here. That's my interpretation. Based upon a judge who did everything he could. Even the verdict sheet in this case is not, you can't understand it. I've never seen anything like it. And so now suddenly the DA, Martha, agrees. The DA says, we're not going to object to his sentencing. They want to throw him in jail, but they know that this is a case that will go in Trump's favor, and they don't want that to happen.
So this is Alvin Bragg. There's so many cases that we've been keeping straight, but you know, this was the hush money case, and you remember that Alvin Bragg basically took something that was beyond the statute of limitations and extrapolated it into, I think, 34 counts it was in the end, which had people outraged back then. Do you think that they are now looking at this situation and that they got cold feet? I mean, at one point, Merchan did say back in the courtroom, you know, it's not lost on me that I have someone here who may be the next president of the United States. Do you think that they just said, you know what, we don't really want this on our shoulders?
Well, I think that it is inevitable that this case will be reversed. And I think that maybe Merchan did everything he had to do, that he allowed in testimony regarding a crime that nobody knows what it was, and that in the end, they will be able to say that Donald Trump is a convicted felon. He's been convicted on 34 counts. But you know what? We're going to delay the sentencing because maybe if they had the sentencing and Donald Trump took an appeal depending upon how quickly the appellate court wanted to rule on this. I mean, this is an important case where exigent circumstances would require an appellate court to take it up immediately. They don't want to be slapped down either.
Yep.
So, I mean, there are so many avenues here in this case. But the one thing that is so essential to understand, Martha, is that every turn was against Donald Trump. Now, all of a sudden, we're clean. We don't want to get involved in anything political. It's a presidential election season, and we're gonna just adjourn the sentencing until after election. And by the way, Jack Smith got a superseding indictment, right? Georgia's nowhere in that case. We don't know, even know who the prosecutor is. Merchan doesn't want to be hanging alone on this, where he's definitely going to be slapped.
Let me ask you this.
So I just want to say this real quick, just to give an update. Remember, there was 4 cases against Trump. You had the New York hush money trial. You had the Georgia election interference. You had the Florida classified documents. And then you had the Washington, D.C. January 6th. Well, check it out. The New York hush money trial, he's went to court. Now they've delayed the sentencing because of the immunity with the Supreme Court. The case in Georgia for the election interference has been delayed indefinitely. Why? Because the person that went after him has been caught doing so much shady stuff and also evidence tampering that it's been suspended indefinitely. The case in Florida with Judge Cannon was thrown out, and the case in Washington, D.C. with the Jan 6 had to be reinstated as a new case with the same Jack Smith who tried to get him in Florida. All these 4 cases that tried to come up against Trump to put him in jail right before the election, almost all of them have deteriorated to nothing. Why? Because they had no basis for any of this. Let me know your thoughts.
Which is a purely political question about all of this, because there was clearly a big rush in all these cases. Jack Smith wanted his cases, which were January 6th and the documents case, which got thrown out by the judge in Florida. They wanted all this to happen before the election. Do you think that the fact that Kamala Harris is now the candidate has made them cool their heels a little bit, that they're less worried about a second President Trump term?
They may look at it and say, you know, it looks tight, and that's why I go back to the political. That this little bit where if you put or sentence someone running for president on house arrest or whatever confinement, the country will go crazy. We are a republic. This is the United States. You don't put someone running for president in jail or house confinement.
What about November 26th, when we'll know? I mean, either he's the next president or he is not, or he loses the election. Will there be a sentencing then?
They will have to make a decision first on the immunity part of this, based on the Supreme Court's decision. That will then be appealed, and then they would probably go to a sentencing. But here's the thing. If he's president, they can't put him in jail at that point, okay? Because he's got to run the country. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of avenues on this one. But I've never seen them say, we don't want to be political. No.
Yeah.
It's all politics. Let me tell you this. If there's anything that this election year has revealed, you got Trump who almost got shot, all these cases against Trump, Joe Biden gets kicked out of the White House, essentially. Kamala Harris steps in. She's done one interview compared to Trump and all them who've done like 34, 35. Her and Walz have only done one compared to 34, 35. It is that the politics nowadays, what the Democrats have been doing is all a sham. It's all fake. When you bring in 10 plus million illegal immigrants into the United States to try to make them immediate citizens, to gain their votes, we know it's all fake. But I'm telling you what, there's the underlying thing, there's something that doesn't get talked about enough, and that's the foreign policy that we are on the brink of World War III. Check this out.
Represent.
So I have to, I just feel like I brought up Cheney. You know, there are a lot of bad people in the world. I don't think Cheney's the worst person in the world in the running, but I could think of others. But I don't want that event, the Cheney endorsement, the family endorsement of Kamala Harris, of all people, to pass by without examining its significance. This feels like, if historians were honest, this is an event that they would write about 50 years from now, when the actual architecture of the world became clear to everybody. This is what's really going on. This is how it really works. But I'll stop and ask you what you think of it.
I have a very simple message for my Democrat friends, my independent friends, those who may not be sure about who they're voting for in this election. Dick Cheney has just made the choice very clear. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for Dick Cheney, the architect of everything that has gone wrong in the Middle East for the last few decades.
Wow. That's huge.
And so it's interesting because if you listen to the New York Times or some of the other mainstream media, they're saying, oh, don't expect much from Kamala Harris in the way of policies and details and plans, and we're not going to know much about what kind of president she's going to be because she doesn't have much time. They're conveniently ignoring the fact that she's been there working in the White House the last 3.5 years alongside Joe Biden. She's been the last one in the room, according to her, as these big decisions are being made. But we look at who she says, her response to the Dick Cheney announcement today was that she was honored to have his endorsement. And we got military veterans in the House.
Let's go.
Got a lot of you who probably served in the Middle East like I did. And so it sickened me, Tucker, to read those words today, both from Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, and Kamala Harris, because we have people who we care very much about who were killed in those wars because of Dick Cheney. Kamala Harris has told us all we need to know about what kind of commander-in-chief she would be. And I don't know about you, but I would not trust her for a moment with the lives of my brothers and sisters in uniform.
Heck no.
So you were a sitting Democratic member of Congress, and you know them all, obviously. Them all, from Hillary Clinton, who hates you with a special kind of ferocity. I think she's called for putting you in prison.
This is true.
I think she literally wants to put you in prison. I think she said that.
Listen to this.
So
This
I'm
is
happy to have you
crazy.
join the exclusive club that I belong to. But, like, what do they think of this? It's the Democratic Party, at least when I was growing up, was the party of, hold a bake sale. The Pentagon doesn't need more bombers or whatever. And now it's just kill them all, let God sort them out because we're getting rich doing it. Are they comfortable with this? Like, what do they think of this behind closed doors?
This is again, showing kind of the realignment where you have Adam Kinzinger and Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney supporting and endorsing Kamala Harris proudly, people who have been neocons and are neocons, not hesitating to say, let's go to war in any and all situations, regardless of the cost and consequence. And then you have people like Bobby Kennedy and myself and others who are standing with Donald Trump, not because we agree on every single thing under the sun, but because we agree on the most important things, which is really about our ability as Americans to live and thrive in a truly free and prosperous society. And we cannot be free or prosperous unless we're at peace.
I remember when the war in Ukraine broke out in February of 2022, and I just want to say at the outset, there are tons of people I respect and love and am related to who had very different views of that war than mine. I don't judge anyone who reaches different conclusions. But the one thing that I do judge people on is not caring about getting in a nuclear war. I just have too many children, I guess. And you were one of the first people to say, whatever you think of this conflict or how it started or how it might end, we should be concerned because this is the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, and we could wind up in a nuclear war that would kill everyone in the world.
100%.
And I remember that you were denounced as like a Nazi for worrying about nuclear war.
Yeah.
And now we're even closer. Does anyone in Washington understand this or care?
They don't care. That's a fact. If they did care, they wouldn't speak so easily about the fact that we are closer to the brink of nuclear war than ever before in our country's history. I was warning about this back in 2019, 2020 when I was running for president, talking about this threat, how if we are continuing to wage what then I called a new Cold War, if we're continuing to increase tensions and heighten tensions with other nuclear armed countries in the world, the inevitable outcome of that is nuclear war, and we should all be very clear-eyed about what that means. That if a nuclear missile was headed our way, which, by the way, all of us in this country are within range of a nuclear missile, what happens? You might get an alert go off on your phone saying, as we did in Hawaii, as you remember back in 2017, we had this missile alert that went off saying, missile inbound to Hawaii. Seek shelter immediately. This is not a drill. And so for everyone across Hawaii that morning,
that'd be so
there
scary.
was that thought like, wow, I may only have 15 minutes to live. And just like we're sitting here in this hall here tonight, people may have been sitting on the beach, it was early on a Saturday morning, or making breakfast or whatever was going on. What do you do? Where do you go? There is no shelter. And therefore, then there is the inevitable realities that if there is a nuclear war, it results in annihilation of all living things. And yet so I was talking about this and warning about this when I was running for president every single day, multiple times a day, every single town hall, trying to open people's eyes up and get other candidates for president to talk about this, get the media to talk about this, because no one wanted to do it. I even had a reporter who came up to me who was, they have these reporters who follow the different candidates around, and she came up to me and she's like, Tulsi, you talk about this every single day. Don't you have anything else to talk about? What is there to talk about if we are in the midst of a nuclear Armageddon? What else is there to talk about? And so fast forward to now where we are today, unfortunately, things have gotten far, far much worse, not better.
Yeah, they have.
And you have these so-called security experts and defense experts and pundits on television being so dangerous and careless, talking about nuclear war, and we have these smaller nuclear weapons, and we'll drop one, and we'll send a strong message, and talking about a nuclear bomb as though you can just go lob a nuclear bomb and there will be no consequence. And they're lying to the American people in doing so. It is so incredibly dangerous because that's not real. It's not rooted in reality. Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev said it best in 1985 when they issued that joint statement together, recognizing this risk, saying that a nuclear war cannot be won and should never be fought. And yet we have the neocons, Democrats and Republicans alike, who are eager to push us into this potential of World War III that can only end in a nuclear war.
And I'll tell you this, the one thing that I always give credit to Donald Trump over is that no new wars were started. Under Joe Biden's presidency, not only do we have the war at the southern border of the United States, we also have Hamas attacks Israel, October 7th. Russia invades Ukraine. China's talking about Taiwan. It's just so unreal to think about where we're at now versus where we used to be at. And all it takes, and it's all because of the leadership. And that's why we need new leadership. And that's why, because what you're about to see next, y'all have heard it in Colorado. You've had a lot of Venezuelans that have taken over apartment complexes. Where's the National Guard? Where's the police? Why aren't they reporting this? Check this out.
But the number one thing is to secure the border, is to end catch and release and stop releasing illegal immigrants into this country. And the only way that's going to happen is to win in November. Understand, this crisis is man-made. When Donald Trump was president, I worked hand in hand with him to secure the border. And we had incredible success. By the end of his first term, we had achieved the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. That's what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris inherited. And they deliberately broke the border. They opened it, and instantaneously we went from the lowest rate in 45 years to what we have now, the highest rate of illegal immigration ever recorded. And it is because of catch and release that when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris apprehend an illegal immigrant, they just let them go. And that encourages, we've had 11.5 million illegal immigrants.
See, this is the crazy thing. Is like people say like this isn't true. Like these are real videos. These are real people coming into the United States unvetted, no idea where they're from, no idea what they're here for, didn't go through the legal immigration process, and yet they're being put in front of people that are trying to do what's right. That's what's messed up.
Come into this country, and you rightly highlighted Venezuela. I believe Maduro is very deliberately sending criminals to America, that he is emptying out his jails. He's sending murderers and rapists and child molesters. Look, I'm right now in El Paso, Texas. I am on the southern border as we speak. I just finished visiting with a young businesswoman here in El Paso who described to me her home is right by the border, and she described how she and her husband regularly encounter illegal immigrants going past her house night after night after night, and how she feels.
I've never seen this image before. Like this is crazy. Can you believe this? Look at that. They're on the train.
For her safety. This is not right. And it is because the Democrats, they're willing to jeopardize your safety and my safety in order to bring in 11.5 million people that they believe will ultimately vote Democrat.
Wow.
This is all about political power. And if people's lives, if people have to be murdered, if children have to be assaulted, sadly, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and congressional Democrats are willing to look the other way.
How sad is that? Like, oh my goodness. But you know what? We got some good news to show you. There's a lot of craziness that's going on, but we got some good news to show you because it doesn't look good for Kamala Harris. The more that every day that passes through, it's looking worse and worse and worse for her. Look at the polls. Check this out.
Well, to find out here now, live in studio is Manslansky and Partners President Lee Carter. Lee, good to see you. Again, we're getting a lot of polls, right?
Yeah, we are.
And they've changed, since Biden is out and Kamala is in. But I always saw when I ran for Congress, those who live and breathe politics, they know what they're going to do. But the undecided voters, the people that are adjacent to what we talk about every day, they don't start paying attention until September and October. Do these polls mean much now? Is it really when we get in, 2 to 3 weeks from now? Where do we stand, and what do these polls mean?
They start to matter now, and I think a couple of things that I'm really surprised by. Number one, I was first surprised by how well Kamala did right off the bat. But what I'm surprised by is after the DNC, she has had no additional bump.
Right.
And the other thing I'm surprised by is if you look at where Biden was at this very same point in the race, he was ahead by 7 points in the race. Right now, Kamala is just ahead by 3. Hillary was ahead by 4. So she's not doing as well as any of those candidates did. And if you look at the details, if you look at how she was doing with Black voters, Latino voters, across the board there, she's not doing as well as her predecessors did. And that's not good news for her, especially because Donald Trump has a history of overperforming the polls. Whatever the polls say, he usually does between 1 and 3 points higher, and the general sometimes even more than that.
Right, and there's been something I've been wanting to point out, and this is Arnon Mishkin wrote this before the DNC started. He said that President Trump did about 2 points better in the key battleground states in both years, in 2016 and 2020. The implication for this year, if he hits 48% in the popular vote, which is about where he's been in the polling, and he could still easily get 50% in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin and return to the White House, speaking of overperforming in those key battleground states. One quick thing, in the CNN poll, the percentage of people who might change their minds on the vote, it was astonishing to me. I don't know if this is normal or not, but in all the key swing states, 11 to 15% of people might change their mind.
That's a pretty significant number. I mean, I think I do remember that back in 2020, there was about 12% who said that they were still soft support about this time in the race. So it's about in line. But the thing that is also really interesting to me is the change in voter enthusiasm that's happened among Democrats. Now, Democrats, when Biden was the candidate, only 38% enthusiasm. Now we see 68% enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. It's a huge shift, and what that translates to is more likelihood to get out into the polls. But when we look all throughout, no matter what polling average you look at, the reality is in every single one except for Georgia, Donald Trump overperformed those polls between 1 and 3 points. You can count on that. You can count on that still happening. And I'm sure, having talked to voters, there's many voters out there who say, you know what? I don't really like the man. And he even said this last night in his interview with Hannity. I don't really like the man, but I've got to vote for him anyway. And it's hard to know what you're going to do until you're in that moment. What am I going to do?
Because remember, we reported just last night that Alan Dershowitz, lifelong Democrat, has always supported the Democrat, just said, I am leaving the Democratic Party. I'm going independent, and y'all will know who I'm voting for November 1st. That's a big deal. Why? Because the Democrats are not what they used to be.
I'm going to vote for him. And I don't think it's that people are ashamed. In some cases, that is the case. But I think there's a lot of people who are like, you know what? Am I really going to do this? Because there's societal pressure not to. All around, the mainstream media is telling you that you're a bad person if you're going to do that. And I think it's hard for people to come to terms with that.
Hey.
And that's why we see him over.
On True Life News, if you vote for Donald Trump, we ain't going to shame you. We say we need Trump in office. And I've had people that have said on the comments, you're a Trump lover. You just love Trump. Like, look, I love America. And I love whenever I hear the person who's running for office say he wants to put America first. And we haven't heard that from Joe Biden. We haven't heard that from Kamala Harris. They don't have no clue how to run a country. Why do you think we're in the mess that we're in? But under Trump, we had one of the best economies, lowest unemployment rates, no new wars, people were winning, grocery prices were great, homes were affordable. That's why I say to vote for Trump.
I may not like him, but I love his policies and what they do for my family and my pocketbook. That's where people go. But I want to go to this because Hillary Clinton's gal pals still aren't over her loss or pushing sexism as the reason she never became president.
Do you think that America's evolved, watching what we witnessed in 2016 and the role particularly that sexism played then? Have we evolved to have women in leadership roles in this country? And if not, what do you think still needs to change?
Well, in short, Huma, yes, I think we have. I think what Hillary Clinton did is she shattered the glass ceiling, but it didn't quite break. And what I expect Vice President Harris to do is to break it into the zillions of pieces. She helps bring us together. She puts joy and laughter and a sense of unity back in our country. And that's why I think it has been so electric.
You know, Lee, I look at this and I go, if you have a gilded age where everyone is working and making money and there's world peace, joy is great. But if people can't pay the bills, people don't care about your joy. They care about what are you going to do to make it better.
I think it's fair, but I think, you know what, to be, in all honesty, as a pollster, as someone who tracks messaging, Kamala's shift in messaging has been really smart. She's gone from this fight against democracy to now we're going to fight for our freedoms. Suddenly we're fighting against evil, and now we're fighting for ourselves. It's really, really smart. And the idea or the notion that Hillary Clinton lost because of sexism is absolutely egregious, because you know what Hillary Clinton lost? Because she had no message. She had no winning vision. Do you remember what it was? It was Hillary for America. Do you remember what her signature policies were? There were 120 of them. Nobody knew what she was all about. The only thing that people could say is that I'm voting for her to be the historic first woman president. She did not run a good campaign. Kamala right now, I would argue, is running a decent campaign, and it's not because of her gender. She's running a smart campaign for who she is. Is it going to be enough? I don't think so. But right now, she's really turned the tables.
But as a woman, I say this, boy, they will use that gender as a crutch to lean on and then whack you with it. And the message is, you're a sexist and a bigot and a misogynist if you don't vote for Kamala. That's the message. And they're still trying to work that trick on the American people after Hillary lost, L-O-S-T, done. Moving on, but speaking of...
Just think about this. Have y'all seen it through X? You've heard like white dudes for Harris, all this other stuff. Imagine if they did that for Trump. Imagine if they said white dudes for Trump. I'm telling you what, the media would have a heyday. It's so flipped around. It's so backwards. You can only say certain things because she's a woman, or you can only say certain things because she's a woman of color. That's the part that we've got to get away from. Forget all that stuff. We, at the core of all of us, citizens, what I'm saying, are American. And that flag right there is for every single one of us that are Americans, and it doesn't care what you look like, where you come from, what's the color of your skin. What it matters is that we are Americans together, and we need to unite together, and that's what I think Trump's going to do.
Kamala Harris. Moving on to this, one columnist thinks that Kamala Harris doesn't need policy to win, claiming that a detailed platform will hurt her campaign more than it will help. Perhaps it's the kind of thinking that explains why she has yet to have a solo interview or press conference since becoming the Democrat nominee. And her number two, Tim Walz, is following in her footsteps, giving the cold shoulder to reporters. Watch this, Lee.
Governor, are you going to take any policy questions? Governor, what do you? Governor Walz.
The campaign trying to shut up reporters on the trail in Pennsylvania, but that she doesn't need any policy, that it would hurt her.
Well, I'm not sure that I agree that that's true, but I'm not sure that from a campaign perspective it's wrong, because the more that she talks, the more she talks about policy, the more she loses. In fact, people start to realize how far left she is. There's really no way that she can distance herself from Bidenomics. The way people feel right now, it's just going to feel worse. And I think the more people hear from her about her policies, the more they're going to realize that her campaign is smart because they're keeping her disciplined. They're saying, this is what you're good at. You can do this stump speech, don't do anything else. You can talk about this, it works, this does not. And for 60 days, and that's what she's got left to do it, that's what she's probably going to stick to. And I don't think that we're going to see that strategy move. I don't think it's smart. I think people need to look at what she's really going to do and understand what she's going to really do before you decide to vote, because a lot of people are voting on feelings here rather than what's reality. But I just don't think that she's going to.
You see, that makes me so upset, because that they shouldn't be allowed. If you are running for president, we should hold them to the highest standard possible. You have to lay out your policies. You have to, over the past, say 5, 7, 8 years, you have to explain, why did you say this? Why did you say this? What do you stand for? What is your vision for America? When somebody goes to a job interview, they have a list of things that they've got to do, and this is what, and we need to review you. We need to interview you, and we need to make sure that you are the right candidate for this job. That's how it works at any other job. The United States is the largest employer, in the United States. The government is. And for the most powerful job in the entire world, I think we need to be able to interview Kamala Harris. We need to be able to hear what she has to say, and not some dang Harvard scholar that writes her teleprompter. That's what bothers me. And whenever I hear people that are like, oh, the more she speaks, the worse it gets, so we're just not going to let her speak. That just literally tells American people that, yes, we think y'all are stupid enough that y'all won't question her because she doesn't speak, that you're just going to follow her just because she's a Democrat, and that's how you vote. You just vote to align with the party, not with the actual person and what they stand for. So with that, I think we're in a big awakening. I think that this election is going to reveal a lot, and I'm so glad that the RNC is doing what they're doing, suing all these states to make sure that they have fair voter rolls. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Just want to say thank you to everybody that is watching. If you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. And don't forget, the links are in the description to join our community. It's less than $1 per month. It's only 99 cents. And what we're trying to do is build it up to 10,000 members. We're going to take that money and we're going to go out into the world and we're going to do positive change. And we're going to video it. You're going to be a part of that. And that's the way that we can all come together to make some huge impact in this world in a positive way. Just want to say thank you to everybody that has joined today on the channel as members. Thank you to everybody that has given a super chat today. We couldn't do it without you. We love you. We thank you. And we hope that you'll help grow this community with us. And we will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.